I don't necessarily see that homosexuality and the growth of the LGBTQ2A whatever plus community is necessarily diametrically opposed to a Christian faith. I don't believe that homosexuality is a sin.
An atheist argument for morality.
I just want to say that the word
I'm not
no is doing a
talking
lot
about
of heavy
morality.
lifting in this
We're
discussion.
talking about
Not-
morality. The whole point of this debate is
No!
how do you determine
Listen
truth?
to me, Rachel. Holy fuck!
How do you
Listen.
determine
No,
truth?
listen
Settle
to me.
down.
You're such
Let's
a
all
psycho.
chill. The form of Christianity we're prescribing would be like an absolute deontological system of ethics.
Yes.
And utilitarianism is diametrically opposed to deontology, where there's no absolute starting point. It's all about the outcome. But so if you're going to be prescribing utilitarianism, you would be again in direct opposition to what we would consider true fundamental Christianity, Orthodox Christianity. So how do you, and I guess the question to put to you is like, how do you get from utilitarian reasoning back to this Christian unification that you mentioned earlier, Nick?
So, I mean, I guess I would argue that throughout all of Christendom, even beyond the Orthodox Church, right, into the Israelites and in Judaism, there's always been a blending and a melding of deontology and consequentialism, and the state has always been run to some extent on a utilitarian premise on the basis of contracts, even going like back before the church's creation. Like what else is like the ceremonial law, right? Like the ceremonial law was a number of a list of contracts that the Jews had to keep between them and God that existed for the purpose of utility expressly, right? Making sure that your clothes weren't made of more than 3 different twines or whatever it is, right? To separate them from the Israeli Semites from the Canaanites and the Assyrians and the Babylonians and that sort of thing. Like I fundamentally, I guess, reject the idea that Christianity has ever had a purely deontological framework, including going back to like the time of the Israelites and things. There's always been a blending of both.
Okay, but it sounded like you want to create more of a Western liberal democracy where the government and the state are expressly separated.
Yeah.
And we make laws based on some kind of utilitarian framework, which would be based on what? Things like stats, studies.
Do you guys agree that religion is the best means of determining truth and morality?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
Yeah,
He's not convinced.
I'm a divine command theorist, technically speaking. So.
I'm more of a virtue ethicist. So like, I think it can be, but like the question of like whose religion is right is always left too ambiguous. Because like which religion, whose version? Protestantism, Orthodoxy, Catholicism, Islam.
Well, let's just say broadly
everyone
speaking,
thinks that they're right, and this is
just
the issue
like
that
broadly speaking. Do you think that the Christian religion is like the best way to reason morally and for truth, like the Christian God? Or is there some alternative that you would appeal to?
I would appeal to that for myself.
Okay.
The problem is that I wouldn't use that to enforce state laws because it seems like humans consistently get God wrong a lot. In fact, it looks like almost the entire Bible and most of Scripture is about humans getting God wrong over and over and over and over and over again.
Well, I was going to say, like where I was going with that is like, if you agree that Christian morality and Christian ethics are like the most ideal, that's good. That's what a Christian should believe. But then you appeal to like utilitarian legislation. Well, and you're saying that that's ideal for how we ought run our society. But that's led us to just one example, like a massive rise in LGBT population over the past, 20 years. It's really exacerbated to where we've got like 20% of the Zoomer generation is some form of LGBT. But that's diametrically opposed to Christian ethics, to be gay, to be, bisexual or trans or whatever it may be. That does not conform with Christian morality. So, but that's a product of utilitarian individualist reasoning, and it's a product of democracy as well, where people are just in favor of this now. So wouldn't that be an example of utilitarianism actually taking you away from Christian morality, which you say is actually the best standard to go by? How do you rectify that? Because I'm sure you guys are okay with LGBT and like gay marriage, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to assume,
Mhm.
Are you?
Yeah, no, that, yeah, you got a good assumption there. There you go.
Okay. So how do you rectify this? Like as
So
Christians?
sorry, I guess for me, I wouldn't have to rectify it, right? Because I don't necessarily see that homosexuality and the growth of the like LGBTQ2A whatever plus community is necessarily diametrically opposed to a Christian faith. I think there's like tons of theological arguments that kind of like get baked in there, which I don't know if we want to get into that, but we can. I would just argue that in general, like the rise of the LGBTQ community isn't a great metric for deciding whether or not your society is like healthy and productive or not. I would say like a good
But in
metric that
terms of good, it actually is, because you guys both agreed that Christian morality is the best morality, and it's very clear. I mean, you're gonna have a very hard time disputing the claim that homosexuality is condemned in Christianity, that it's wrong. So it actually is a good example, a good metric to go by, to say like if our homosexual population is rising, then that's actually not ideal by by a Christian moral system. This hyper individualist, subjective reasoning on Christianity is actually antithetical to the true and real Christianity that we prescribe. So it is actually going to be very difficult to have an outcomes implications based discussion, because we fundamentally disagree on the theology, and it leads you guys to think that the outcomes that are good that we actually would claim are bad. And
yeah.
but that's all rooted in our theology.
So
So I mean,
I would argue
you guys, go ahead, respond. Go ahead.
yeah, I would argue that it's completely impossible to have any discussion about implications and prescriptions within a Christian framework without a utilitarian lens. You also need a deontological lens, absolutely, but you also need a consequentialist lens. Like most of the ceremonial law that would like and the Mosaic law that was like given down by Moses, right? Most of it was about consequences, right? It wasn't the case that it was deontologically wrong to like eat pork as an example, right? That changed. It was because of the consequence. It's like they didn't have the technology didn't exist to be able to like farm and manufacture pork in such a way that you wouldn't get listeria and things like that. That's why these things were unclean. It was like in many ways it seems historically and biblically as a deontological thing, and it is to an extent. But the reason it was from a divine command theorist perspective, it was deemed wrong by God is because of a consequence, right? The entire Bible, Old and New Testament, is filled with consequences, and a lot of the time, the reason why a thing is deemed wrong or right or clean or unclean is based on some element of consequence, right? It's like you can't divorce this thing, right? It's always been both.
You guys don't realize how much you're influenced by Protestantism. You're basically taking like a dispensationalist view, is what you're saying. You're saying, okay, well, we had Mosaic law, and then God didn't change, but this.
It would be really helpful if you stopped presuming what we think and believe about things and just engage with what we're saying, because I'm going to just keep saying you're incorrect about that presumption.
Okay. Well, then please tell me what your justification is. What's your epistemological justification for saying that it's fine to be gay? Why should society endorse and celebrate homosexual lifestyles?
Sorry, do you think that that's what we've expressly said? Just to be clear.
Well, do you think that's good? Yeah, I mean, you said something earlier that alluded to the fact that you didn't think there was anything wrong with it, and
so I guess here's what I say is that I think for Christians, when we worry about sin, right? Because that's what we're talking about, right? We should worry about ourselves. And I'm not saying that homosexuality is a sin. That's something that I'm trying to figure out for myself. And where I'm landing on right now is I don't believe that homosexuality is a sin. And when I look into scripture, I have a really hard time finding a unanimous verse that will tell me as such. It seems like a lot of the biblical verses that talk about any kind of sexual infidelity or whatever you want to call it is like super specific in a whole bunch of different ways and doesn't necessarily refer to exactly what we're talking about. And what has been considered moral through scripture in regard to sexuality has changed also between the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Old Covenant, the New Covenant, and within the New Covenant, like things like divorce laws, right? And Jesus changing the Jewish conception of what marriage was meant to be and that sort of thing. Like, and so these things are extremely complicated, but I don't want to get into a theological, like an apologia type discussion about homosexuality specifically. We can potentially, but I don't really want to right now because I'm not 100% sure where I land there. But I think more importantly, as Christians, it's not really worthwhile for us to be minding the sliver in the eye of the Gentile and ignoring the plank in our own eye. Like I don't see the purpose, right? Like if we look at Jesus's life, right? It's filled with him pointing his finger at the Pharisees and the Sadducees, right, and the false teachers and the hypocrites. It's not at pointing at the prostitutes and the lepers and calling them disgusting and telling them that they're ruining society.
But he insisted that they change. He said, leave that way of life and take up your cross and follow me. He didn't say it's fine to be a prostitute. You do you, girl. Keep going.
I totally agree. I think you guys are doing this move right now. You're not connected.
We're definitely talking past each other. I agree.
Both of you have your foot on the gas. You're not hitting each other.
So Rachel asked a question earlier. She said, like, how is it that you reason from a utilitarian lens? And I don't think the question was answered. How do you reason from a utilitarian lens that society should accept, tolerate, and or promote homosexuality?
Well, it seems like historically we've had a long history of intolerating these specific groups. It hasn't seemed to broadly reduce the fact that there are some people that seem to be inherently gay or trans. There's exceeding amounts of evidence for this, right? Some are born this way. Now, you can argue that in modern society, more people are becoming culturally and like kind of identifying this culturally. Sure, we can have that argument, but it doesn't change the fact that even in mammalian, like other species, being homosexual, for example, reappears over and over. Now, we've got a long-standing,
very rare,
lots of great history.
Very rare in animals.
Sort of. We have a long history of oppressing, telling these people religiously, and for all other reasons, that they're bad, they're degenerates, that they're all these negative things. It doesn't seem to have gone away.
Wouldn't you agree?
And our society doesn't seem better because now we've better or worse necessarily because we've accepted them from a utilitarian focus. We're focused on broad happiness overall. So if we let gay people be gay, they're probably going to be happier. If we stop telling them that they're dirty degenerates and that they don't belong in church and that they're just like invaluable because of who they are, they're probably going to be happier. So you've got a decent large population.
How does let people
you
be
said
happier
utilitarian?
How does let people be happier comport with what you guys have both affirmed as Christianity being the best standard of morality and truth and whatnot? How do you exegete this in your text in the Bible that we should let people be happier even if it means more homosexuals in the population?
He didn't have a soul that God didn't stuff a separate soul into Christ. That's Arianism. You don't know what the hell you're talking about.
You're just making shit up, man. Okay, so would you agree? Would we both agree that God exists outside of time or something like that?
Yes, but we're talking about the incarnation.
So God,
and I don't think
in some way, imparted himself. I'm using weird words, right? Imparted himself on a human body, which is Jesus, right? So whenever God imparted himself within time, which is where humans reside.
You're wrong. Christ was a person No, I'm telling you, Christ was a person before he was incarnated.
Without a body within time. And then at some point...
No, he was outside of time and then he was incarnated.
Exactly!
That's what I just said.
Holy shit, Rachel. We are answering your question over and over and over and over and over. You just think you have a big gotcha. The issue is that we fundamentally are disagreeing about something again. Stop trying to be like, oh my gosh, I got such a great gotcha. You don't.
Well, okay.
We disagree about this. We agree that God existed eternally. Hold on.
Do you guys
She's questioning all that money she spent on
do not tell me to calm down.
Okay, all four of you stop, chill out.
An atheist argument for morality.
I just want to say that the word no is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this discussion.
We're talking about morality. The whole point of this debate is
how do you determine Listen to me, Rachel. Holy fuck. Listen. No, listen
Settle
to
down.
me.
Let's all chill. Let's all chill. Let's all chill. Let's all chill out. Let's all chill out.
Rachel,
let's all stop. Chill.
This is like
I'm gonna hey, chill out. Okay, last time I gave it to Zen. This time I'm gonna give it to NotSoErudite. NotSoErudite, just take that mental breath. Just breathe.
I really don't appreciate people telling me to calm down because emotions are completely fine. And just because I'm feeling emotional doesn't make it a problem. Okay. I am angry because I feel like Rachel is actively I'm getting feedback all of a sudden. Is that from?
No. Not sorry.
No,
Look,
I'm
you're
fine.
good. I get it. I expected this discussion to be heated. I know tensions would flare, but I'm just trying to. I'm not telling you to calm down because of some other factor, except the only that you're going to have to communicate to Zen and Rachel, and if
I'm
you need to
very
do it in
confident
a.
in doing so. Yeah, I'm very confident in doing
okay.
so, and I will do
There you
so
go.
politely, right? I'm not interested. I've levied no insults. I'm not going to do that. I don't know where this feedback's coming from, but somebody's giving
I
me
think it's you,
feedback.
Pedro, because you.
My mic is cursed. This is
Okay,
the cursed
sorry.
mic.
It's
One
just
second.
it's really distracting for me, so it ruins
that
my
better?
brains. My frustration is, first
Yep.
of all, this is why I tell Zen to stop telling me to calm down, because emotions are super valuable for the debates, because we all care about this. I've already told you my faith is the most foundationally important thing in my life. Of course I care about it. And you should get heated about something that you think is the most important thing in your life. Of course. Second of all, Rachel,
Disagree.
please engage with what I am saying. What we're talking about is morality. And then we moved on to, well, I could drop acid and see mechanical clowns, and that doesn't prove anything. And I said, you're right. So there's some level of metaphysical assumption made by science, which is that we exist and that reality is there before us. And we act
So
as though
metaphysics
reality
are a
does
necessary
exist.
precondition to empirics. Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, in our worldview,
in
it is,
our worldview.
because we live in a
Yes. Okay.
in a
So then we
universe.
agree. We agree.
I'm
You
not
have to have a
done. I'm not
metaphysic in
done.
order to reason
I'm not
empirically.
done, Zen.
Well, it's a back and forth. I mean, you
But
continue.
it's okay. Sorry.
Cool. What I was talking about with Rachel's thing of saying, hey,
You're not
what
going to
if I
cry
start
bully me,
seeing
by
these
the
things?
way, Erudite. I'm not going to get offended.
I'm
by your
literally not
emotional
cry bullying.
outbursts,
I'm
okay?
Wait.
literally
Hold
not
on.
cry
If
bullying.
we're gonna talk about cry bullying, what about when I talked over you and you're like, "Come on, man, this is out of control."
Yeah, it was just
on,
because
hold on,
you
hold
were
on,
just
hold on.
random.
Not
You
so
were just
Erudite.
random.
Here's the thing.
Just get it.
I
wasn't
haven't done
crying
any of
bullying
this.
you. I was just like,
Zen,
but-
I don't know why you're levying this. It's so cringe. Okay, I'm not cry
You know
bullying.
what's cringe is spurging out on a debate. And
Come
It's
on,
not
man,
cringe.
why are you talking over me?
It's
It's out
not
of
cringe,
control.
right? It's only
No, that was
cringe if you
cringe.
like
That was cringe. But
objectively.
continue. I'm sorry for doing
It's
that.
only cringe if you think
I will
objectively that
woefully
emotions are like a bad or a big
Thank-
problem,
thank you
which
for
I
your
don't think that
$15,
they're.
Emotions
Matt.
are absolutely a problem in debate because that means you're not reasoning logically.
We have a 16-year experiment showing that if you legalize abortion, and they made it free on demand in Soviet hospitals, no questions asked, any point in the pregnancy, they had this socialist utopia where women could work and the children were raised communally, and it was an absolute disaster. The same thing was tried in Israel a few decades later. We've tried this sort of thing where we try to liberalize and make everything permissible, and every time it ends up with something horrible. So I'm just waiting for you guys to give us any evidence. Since you love science so much, give me some stats, give me some figures, give me something concrete and empirical to show that the more we make everything permissible, that society gets better.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't remember who in this conversation said that we should make everything permissible. Is that you, Zen?
Where do you
I
draw
don't
the
think it was
line?
Zen. Nick,
Then
was
tell
that
me where you
you?
draw the line. How do you know where to draw the line with something like abortion or LGBT or divorce?
The looking around tactic, that is funny. I will give you that is funny.
Thank you. I thought it was funny too.
But yeah, can you answer the question though, like, or try to at least?
So,
Like, where do you draw the line on like what should be permissible, what?
That's fair. I just want to
not?
be clear.
Based on empirics, like
Yeah.
how do you actually determine what is good without the
That-
metaphysic as the precondition, and then apply that to?
I was just going off of
government.
what Nick said when he was like, we don't worry about what other people
Rachel,
are doing.
you're
We worry
almost
about
never going
ourselves.
off of anything anyone has said in this
True.
debate.
That's
It's pretty
true.
consistent.
Nick
and clear.
said when you got up to go get your
Your favorite
water,
word.
he said we should not be worried about what other people are doing. We should only worry about ourselves. Therefore, how do you
I
make a
didn't say
moral
only.
prescription in society for when we tell someone, no, you're not allowed to do that?
So I
That's
didn't
the heart
say
of
only,
this debate.
but that's fair. Is it the heart of the debate? Ooh.
So
Murder is
why are we
wrong.
allowed to legislate that murder is wrong, but we can't legislate that abortion's wrong?
Yeah.
So helpful. I don't mind that you guys disagree with me. It's fine. I'm frustrated by you guys constantly not engaging. Pedro's the only one. Well,
I'm
actually,
totally engaging.
Zen was engaging really
you're
well
not.
for the first half, and Pedro asked a really
I'm
productive
trying
question.
to ask a very fair question.
I asked a
No, you're trying to
super
ask,
simple
in your
question,
world,
which
in
is
your
how would
universe,
why
your
is
government
murder bad?
handle
And we
You
abortion?
guys
already
have asked
explained.
1,000
Roe
questions,
v. Wade's
and then
getting
you
overturned.
rat out
How
of the
does
answer every time.
utilitarian Christian
How would your
apply their system?
government handle abortion? Let me just make it
Yeah.
super simple. The government you want, the one you're advocating for in this debate, how would it handle the question of abortion?
Erudite, are we advocating for a government?
Stop dodging.
Shut the
No,
fuck
no,
up,
no.
dude.
But
You're
that's
such
a fair
loser.
question. That's
No,
a fair
you
question. But
shut
that's a
the
fair
fuck up.
question in the
Just now.
hypothetical. They're just simply asking.
Call me a
you-
pussy?
No, no, stop,
Yeah,
stop.
I'd throw you
stop.
under the table, dude. Then I'd
No,
free
no,
you,
no.
my
You want to
man.
do a push-up contest right now?
Let's
bro?
go.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go. You're an idiot.
Is this
man.
okay,
All right, I'll
Pedro?
get
What
the
do you
counter.
think? What
I'll
do you
get the
think,
counter.
Pedro?
Gross.
All right, Mike first
Embarrassing.
or Nick first.
This is
No, I'm kidding.
embarrassing.
Embarrassing.
It's
But
hot.
here, seriously, think
It's
about it this way.
cringe as fuck.
You are driving people away with your hatred of them. Christ was not hateful. The only people he was ever harsh to were the Pharisees, and you are them. You are so concerned with sin. You're so concerned with laying burdens on people and telling them what they're doing is wrong that you're not looking at yourself. And I imagine that you're pretty nice people overall. I imagine that you do many good works, and that's super great. But the problem is that you go on publicly and spread a message of hatred, and that's really, really sad. And you talk condescendingly about people whose lives actually matter. And Christ loves every one of them. He loves the leper. He loves the prostitute. And does he want them to see in correction and living without sin? Absolutely. Absolutely, he does. But at what point did he ever tell you to go and do that? To you to go and save them? No, you point them to Christ and you let him do the rest. That is what Christ is. That is what the message is. And I'm so fucking mad that you two are bastardizing it for your weird heretical worship of sin. Please stop. Please stop. And I know you're not going to receive this. I know you're all going to just wipe me off as some like feminist, crazy, progressive, like whatever words you're going to use, probably lots of offensive words, right? But that's not Christ either. I genuinely, genuinely hope you two well. I hope you two can look into yourselves. I hope you guys have good kids. I hope you have a good relationship with your family. I hope that your community loves you. And I hope that the community is improved as a result of you guys being in them. Genuinely, I genuinely feel that way. But please stop publicly sharing your message because you are actively harming the body of Christ when you do so.